Hello there friends, it's Ashley here from the Loopy Lamb and loopylamb.com, and thanks so much for stopping by the channel. It is week 17 of the 2023 Amigurumi Advent Calendar Crochet Along, and this week we're going to be making a little friend for our Advent Adam and Advent Addie dolls. Now both of our dolls absolutely love cats, and so do my kids, so we have made little cats for our dolls because every doll should have their own pet friend. So this is made in mostly one piece. The only pieces we're going to be sewing on are the muzzles and the ears, and it's beginner friendly. We're going to be walking you through today step by step how to make these little cats. So without further ado, let's hop on into finding out what materials we need to follow along with today's tutorial. To follow along with today's tutorial and make your own mini amigurumi cat, you're going to need the following materials. You're going to need a 3.5mm or E crochet hook. You'll need a pair of scissors, some pink embroidery thread, a scrap piece of yarn to act as a stitch marker. Alternatively, you can have more than one of these locking stitch markers, but you will need at least one locking stitch marker, a tapestry needle, some polyfill stuffing, two 9mm safety eyes. I got these really cute glitter eyes. These are slip pupil eyes from Chateau Bornet Crochet. And you're going to need a worsted weight yarn in your color of preference. And today I'll be using this Brava worsted weight yarn from Week Crochet in the color Dove Heather. So let me clear my space here and we'll get ready to get started making our mini amigurumi cat. To start with our cat, we're going to need to create a magic circle or adjustable ring. To do that, we're going to take the tail end of our yarn and we're going to lay it across our palm like this, and we're going to pin it down with our thumb. Then we're going to take the working end of our yarn and wrap it around the back of our fingers, bringing it around to the front and then crossing it over itself like this to form an X. Then I'm going to flip my hand over, bringing the yarn with me, and then I'm going to pin it down here between my baby or pinky finger here and my ring finger. Then I'm going to bring in my crochet hook. I'm going to insert my crochet hook under the first strand and over the second, and then I'm going to pull that second strand out and under the first strand. Now when I've got a little bit pulled out there, I'm going to twist my hook like this, so that way it creates a cross right here in my yarn. Then I'm going to take the hook and yarn over with my hook, or with my yarn here onto my hook. So I'll do that again, putting my hook under the yarn, creating a yarn over. Then I'm going to take my hook and pull that yarn through the loop that I just created on my hook. And that's your magic circle created, and you can just take all of that yarn off of your fingers now and you're ready to start crocheting. Now if you need to see that again slower, you can either adjust the speed on your YouTube channel here, or you can also see a full tutorial of this done much slower here on the channel. So to start round one, now that we have our magic circle completed, we're going to do 6 single crochets worked into the magic circle. So when you've got your magic circle, you're going to have it open like this, and we're going to work our single crochets into the circle. So inserting our hook into the ring, we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. At this point, you should have 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over again and pull through both loops on your hook. That's your first single crochet. Now we need to do this 5 more times, so we have 6 single crochets. So back into the ring, yarn over and pull up a loop. There should be 2 loops on your hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through both loops again. Right? And that's 2 single crochets. I'll show you how to do a single crochet one more time. We're going to insert into the ring again, yarn over and pull up a loop. 2 loops are on your hook. Then you'll yarn over again and pull that yarn through the loops on your hook, completing your 3rd single crochet. So now we need to do 3 more because we need 6 total. So we're going to do this 3 more times. There's 1. And 3. So now that I have my 6 single crochets, I can double check that by flipping my work up and finding those V's and counting the V's to make sure I have 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we never count the loop of yarn on our hook as a stitch. So we've got 6 single crochets, and now I can pull that yarn tail on my ring to tighten it up. All right, so I'm going to pull that good and snug, and this is what you should be left with. So now I'm going to bring that stitch marker I mentioned at the beginning here onto my screen because we're going to be using that in just a moment, so have yours handy. So now we're ready to start with round 2. For round 2, we're going to do what's called a single crochet increase into each stitch around. So a single crochet increase is when you place 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So finding that first stitch, you can find that by finding both V's or both strands of your V, and then you're going to insert your hook under both strands to start your single crochet. So to do that single crochet, now that we're into the stitches, we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Now, when your first stitch can be a little snug, as you can see, mine is here, but that's okay. Once you get going, it's just that, usually that first stitch. So now I've pulled up a loop, I've got 2 loops on my hook, then I'm going to yarn over and pull through both loops on my hook to complete my first single crochet. Now I'm going to grab that stitch marker we were talking about, and I'm going to place that stitch marker into that stitch I just completed because we want to keep track of the first stitch of every round. Right? So now I've done my first single crochet. I need to go back into that same stitch to complete the second single crochet of my increase. So going back into that same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And that's your, and that is your single crochet increase completed. Again, it's 2 single crochets worked into the same stitch. So into the next stitch, we're going to do another single crochet increase. So there's my first single crochet, back into the same stitch, and single crochet again. So we're going to continue to do this of 2 single crochets into each stitch around, all the way around our piece. There's my second stitch, into the next. There's 1, and there's 2. Two more increases left to complete. And here's our last one. So now that we have our increases done, you can see we've come full circle and we're right back next to the first stitch. You can and should take a moment at the end of every row or every round here to count your stitches and make sure you have the correct stitch count. At the end of round 2 here, you should have 12 single crochets. And again, you can count that by counting the little V's around. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I'm ready to move on to round 3. For round 3, we're going to move this stitch marker out of the way, and we're going to work 1 single crochet into that first stitch. Now that I've done my first stitch, I'm going to move up my stitch marker here and secure it in place. Into the next stitch of this round, I'm going to work a single crochet increase. And again, that's 2 single crochets worked into the same stitch. So into this next stitch here, I'm going to work 2 single crochets. There's 1 and 2. In the next stitch, I'm going to work 1 single crochet. And into this next stitch, I'm going to work a single crochet increase. Again, those 2 single crochets done into the same stitch. So what we've been doing so far is a pattern, and this pattern that it's a pattern we're going to continue to repeat across this round. And that pattern is 1 single crochet into the first stitch, single crochet increase into the next. That's 2 single crochets done into the same stitch. Now, if you were reading this pattern, the written version of this pattern, you would see it written as 1 single crochet comma, single crochet increase times 6, because we're going to do this pattern repeat 6 times. So we've got a few more repeats left to do. So 1 single crochet into the first stitch, single crochet increase into the next stitch. All right, so we've got 2 more repeats. 1 single crochet into the first stitch, single crochet increase into the next. 1 single crochet into the first stitch, single crochet increase into the next. Oops. At the end of round 3 here, we should have 18 stitches around our piece. For rounds 4 through 8, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So I'm going to move that stitch marker out of the way, and we're going to place 1 single crochet into each stitch. And don't forget to move up your stitch marker. So although we're doing 1 single crochet into each stitch around for rounds 4 through 8, what I want you to do is do rounds 4 and 5 first with just 1 single crochet into each stitch, because in round 5 we're going to be placing our safety eyes, and because we can't place our safety eyes immediately in round 5, I'm going to show you how we're going to mark our stitches so we can put our safety eyes in later, because the eyes have a very specific placement and we need to get it right for our cat to turn out properly. So as you can see, we're just working 1 single crochet into each stitch around. At the end of this round and round 5, you should have 18 single crochets. So if you'd like to pause your video and finish round 4 and round 5, working 1 single crochet into each stitch around, I'll meet you back here at the end of round 5, where I'll show you how to mark where your safety eyes will be going for your cat. All right, so I'm back and I've just finished round 5. Again, we did rounds 4 and 5, placing 1 single crochet into each stitch around. But we're going to pause here at the end of round 5 because we're going to need to place a marker in specific stitches so we know where to put our safety eyes later. So I've got that scrap piece of yarn I was mentioning at the beginning of the video, and this is what we're going to use to mark our stitches, because once we can't put our stitch or our safety eyes in right away, because I'll show you why. If I were to put this eye in right now, that makes that stitch no longer available for me to work into. So I can't do that if I want to continue to build my piece. So the best way to mark our stitches is to use this little scrap piece of yarn here, or alternatively, if you have a stitch marker, you could use that as well. I like the scrap piece of yarn because I find it to be a little more precise. So we're going to be placing our stitch markers or our yarn in stitches 4 and 8 of this round. So to find that stitch, I've got my handy stitch marker here in stitch 1 so that I know where I'm going to start counting from. So counting over from 1, we're going to count over to 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to place my finger there, put my hook through that stitch, and then I'm just going to pick up the scrap yarn and pull that through so one of the ends hangs out. All right, so then I need to find stitch 8. So I know that this now is stitch 4, and counting over from where we just placed our marker, we're going to count over to 8. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So again, placing my finger there where stitch 8 is and inserting my hook into that stitch. Then I'm going to grab the opposite end of my yarn here, and I'm going to pull it through the stitch, making sure that I'm only pulling on the one end, right? Because I want both ends to be hanging out like this. Now, if your stitch marker is long enough and you're paranoid about it falling out, I do this quite often. I'm going to just take my yarn and I'm going to just tie like either a little knot or a little bow because it's just a scrap piece of yarn and I'm just going to probably throw it out later. So there's my markers there, and I'm ready to move on to round 6. Now for rounds 6, 7, and 8, they're all done the same way. We're just going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So moving that stitch marker, placing my first single crochet and then moving up my stitch marker. Now you've already done 2 rows of single crochet and you're like, why are you still here, Ashley? We should be pausing and just working around. But I just want to show you how to work when you've got these little stitch markers in here or your scrap yarn. So now I'm up to stitch 4 here, and this is where I've got my marker. What I'm going to do is it's hard to see, but I'm kind of just gently pulling the stitch marker to the side. So that way I can insert my hook into the stitch, complete my stitch without catching on to the yarn, because we don't want to snag any of your stitch marker there where it actually becomes a part of your fabric. So I've actually selected this specific yarn scrap here because it's it's not plied, so it's not easy to snag. But if you are using another plied yarn, there's no problem with that. Just make sure that you're pushing the yarn down in the back and in the front out of the way of your hook, so when you're working, you're not picking any of that yarn up. So what I'll do now is I'll let you continue to work on this round. This is round 6, and just work rounds 6, 7, and 8 by working 1 single crochet into each stitch around. I'll meet you back here at the end of round 8, and we'll place our safety eyes and move on to round 9. So I'm back and I just finished my last stitch of row 8. Your piece should look like this at this point. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hook down and grab my safety eyes. So when you have your safety eyes, you're using 9mm eyes for this project. You should have 2 safety eyes and 2 washers or backings to your eyes. So at this point, we're going to flip my work around here, and we can see we've got my yarn marker still in place. And I'm just going to undo it here. And now we can clearly see which stitches we're placing our eyes into. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my yarn aside, my yarn marker, and I'm going to insert my eye into the first stitch here. Okay. Then I'm going to pull the other marker aside and place my second eye. Now, because these are slip pupils, I want to make sure that they're both facing the same way before I put my backings on. And you don't have to do this next step. I'm turning mine inside out just so you can see what I'm doing. You don't have to do this. You can probably just place your safety eyes without this, but this makes it easier for you to see. So I've got my safety eyes, and what I'm doing is I'm putting my fingers in behind in my piece here and holding the backs or the fronts of the eyes in place while I put my backings on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the backing on top of one of my eyes, and then I'm just going to push it on. And sometimes I find the little safety eye backs hard to put on, so I use like either the tip of like this pencil or a little tool that I have to help push those on. So we're just going to push the backs onto the backs of the eyes here. These can be a little tricky, especially if I personally find the little ones to be a lot trickier than the bigger one. So now that I've got one of the backs on, I'm going to pull that marker out from behind my safety eye. Okay, I'm confident in that placement, and I'm actually just going to pull the second one out because the other eye isn't going anywhere here. So then I'm just going to place the backing on my second eye here. Again, bear with me. These little ones always give me problems with my fingers. All right, there we go. And they also don't have it as audible as a click as the big ones because the backs or the posts are so small. Anyways, there we go. We've got our eyes. Oh, I love these little blue ones. They're so cute. Okay. I'm going to totally need to order more of these ones. So mine have gotten a little off-centered here, so I'm just kind of spinning them to make sure that the pupils are straight up and down because we are making a cat here. All right, so he's so cute and he's ready to be worked on some more, and we're going to move on to round 9. In round 9, we're actually going to start doing some decreasing to give more shape to the cat's face. So I'm going to bring in my hook again, and you can get rid of your scrap yarn marker. You're not going to need that anymore. And now we're moving on to round 9. So for round 9, we have another pattern repeat that we need to repeat all around our piece. And so let's move our stitch marker out of the way, and we'll start our first pattern repeat. So we're going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch. We've done this so many times at this point, should be no problem. So 1 single crochet into that first stitch, moving up our stitch marker, and then we're going to do what's called a single crochet decrease. Now when I'm doing amigurumi, I like to do what's called an invisible decrease when it comes to decreasing stitches because it makes it a little less noticeable, hence the name invisible decrease. So when we're decreasing, it means we're going to eliminate one of the stitches that we're going to work here. To do this, we're going to insert our hook up under the front loop only of the first stitch. And now if you're not familiar with the front loop versus back loop, take a look at the top of your stitches and you can see that each V is comprised of 2 loops. There's one close to you and one far from you. The one furthest from you is the back loop and the one closest to you is the front loop. So we're going to insert our hook up and under that front loop only. Then we're going to kind of twist our hook so we can pick up the front loop only of the next stitch. All right, so then we're going to yarn over and pull that loop through both of those front loops like this. And now we've got 2 loops on our hook, so we're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. And that completes our single crochet decrease. And now that's our pattern repeat is 1 single crochet in the first stitch followed by a single crochet decrease. And the instructions say that we need to do this 6 times around our piece. So we're going to do that again. So 1 single crochet into the first stitch here, followed by another single crochet decrease. So again, picking up the front loop of the first and the second stitch here, we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. Right? And that's our second pattern repeat completed. We need to do this 4 more times. So 1 single crochet into the first stitch, followed by a single crochet decrease. And again, we're picking up the front loops of that first and second stitch, yarning over, pulling up a loop, and then yarning over and pulling through both loops. Right? So we're going to continue to do this until the end of the row, 1 single crochet, followed by a single crochet decrease. And at the end of this row, you should have 12 stitches. So if you'd like to pause your video and continue to do 1 single crochet, followed by a single crochet decrease around, I'll meet you back here at the end of the round and show you how we're moving on. All right, so I just finished my last stitch of round 9, and this is what our piece looks like. It's kind of looking like a head, still a little out there, but what we're going to be doing now is I'm going to need to start stuffing my toy. Let me grab a little bit of my stuffing here. And the reason we're going to start stuffing now, and we're going to continue to add stuffing as we work through this piece, because soon we're going to, in our next row, we're going to decrease our stitch count even further. And as we decrease, it's going to make it much harder to add stuffing to this piece because it's so tiny. So right now I'm just going to take some stuffing and I'm going to just start placing it inside the head. Now you want to stuff it firmly because the more firm you stuff it now, the longer it will last, because stuffing does have a tendency to break down over time and with play. And we're hoping that these little guys are going to get lots of playtime, so we want them to last as long as possible. Now, a tip for when you're stuffing your toy is when you're adding stuffing, if you put your finger in there and you can feel a little space that feels like a little pocket of air or any obvious gaps in the stuffing, that's a good place where you want to add the stuffing. So that way when you're done, the stuffing doesn't really have anywhere to go. If you have those gaps in there, then the stuffing will eventually expand to fill in that space, and then it will result in a softer toy that is it's not as firm, and it's has less structural integrity, if that makes sense. You just want to make sure that you have no gaps in there. And of course, you want to use caution so that way you're not overstuffing and stretching your fabric. It does take some practice, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it's just one of those things that you know how to do, and you always do it without even thinking. All right, so here's our little cat head. He's actually looking like a head now, and we're ready to start creating his neck. So we're about to start round 10, which is going to create the little indent here for the neck of our cat. Now I just realized that I said decrease before, but we're actually increasing here at this point. We're not decreasing as I had said, so I apologize about that. But we do need to continue to add that stuffing in, so that way as we work and it gets harder to stuff, we've already got that part done. So moving into round 10, we have a repeat that we have to do across our round. And that repeat starts by placing 1 single crochet into the first stitch. Then I'm going to move my stitch marker up and secure it in place. And then we're going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And now we did these right at the beginning of our piece, and that single crochet increase is 2 single crochets worked into the same stitch. And now we're going to repeat this pattern of 1 single crochet followed by a single crochet increase a total of 6 times. And we've got it done once, so we only have to do it 5 more times. So 1 single crochet into the first stitch, and then 2 single crochets into the next. Now, if this is starting to sound a little familiar, it's because we did this in round 3 of this piece. So we should already kind of be familiar with how to do this round. So I'll show you one more time before I let you go and finish it. We're going to work 1 single crochet into the first stitch and a single crochet increase into the next stitch. At the end of this round, you should have 18 single crochets. So if you'd like to pause your video, meet me back here at the end of round 10. I'll show you what we'll be doing at the end of round 10, moving into round 11. All right, so we're back and we're at the end of round 10, moving into round 11. For round 11, we're going to just work 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So again, we're moving up that stitch marker after we put in our first stitch, and then just placing 1 single crochet into each stitch. Then at the end of this round, you should have 18 single crochets. So if you'd like to pause your video and do your 18 single crochets, and meet me back here at the end of round 11, and I'll show you how we're moving on into round 12. So moving on into round 12, we're going to start by placing 1 single crochet into each of the first 13 stitches. So we're going to work 1 single crochet into that first stitch here of round 12. Oops. Moving up our stitch marker. And then we've got 12 more single crochets to do. So there's 1, 3, 9, so that should be 13. I'm just going to double check my count there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I need 1 more because I need a total of 13 single crochets. So now that I've done 13 single crochets, I'm going to do a pattern repeat, which is a single crochet increase into the first stitch, 1 single crochet into the next, single crochet increase into the next stitch, one single crochet into the next, and single crochet increase into the last stitch. At the end of this round, you should have 21 stitches. And again, you can count those by just counting the V's at the tops of your work here. And so now we're ready to move on to round 13. To start round 13, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the first 7 stitches. So doing my first stitch here, and moving up my stitch marker. And now I have to do 6 more. There's 1, 3, and 6. And now I'm going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And now our next instruction is to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 13 stitches. So that's each of the remaining stitches. So at the end of this round, you should have 22 stitches around. And now we're ready to move on to round 14. We're going to start round 14 by working a single crochet increase into each of the first 3 stitches. So again, the single crochet increase is 2 single crochets worked into the same stitch. So I've started 1, moving up my stitch marker, and then working the other part of that increase into the same stitch. And now we're going to do a single crochet increase into each of the next 2 stitches. There's 1 and 2. Now we're going to work a single crochet decrease, and again, when we do that, we want to pick up the front loops of the first and second stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through both loops. Now we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. There's 4, 5, and 6. Now we're going to work another single crochet decrease, and again picking up the front loops of the first and second stitch, pull up a loop, and then pull through both loops on your hook. Now we're going to do a single crochet increase into each of the next 3 stitches. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to place 1 single crochet into each of the remaining 6 stitches. At the end of round 14, you should have 26 single crochet stitches. Now, if you would like at this point, this is a good time to add some stuffing here to the neck of your toy, and we'll continue to add stuffing. It's a little hard for me to do that on the video, but this is a great time to stop and add some stuffing into the neck of your toy. So moving into round 15, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So there's 1 and 2. Now we're going to do a single crochet increase into each of the next 2 stitches. So increase into the first and increase into the next. Then we're going to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch. And we're doing a single crochet decrease next. So again, picking up the front loops of those next 2 stitches, yarning over and then pulling through 2. Then we're going to place 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. Now we're going to do a single crochet decrease. Now we're going to do 1 single crochet into this next stitch. And we're going to do a single crochet increase into each of the next 2 stitches. Now we're going to place 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. Now we're going to do a single crochet decrease. And now we'll do one single crochet into the next. Now in this part here, we're going to create the tail of our cat, and I've created it this way so that way we don't have to actually create a separate tail and sew it on. It's all one piece. So to do that, we're going to do a chain of 12. So we're going to yarn over hook and pull through the loop on our hook, and that's 1. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through the loop on our hook, and that's 2. We're going to continue to do this yarn over and pull through the loop on our hook until we have 12 chains. So I'm at 3, and we're going to continue until we have 12. So now that I have my 12 chains, I am going to kind of turn what I'm doing here because I need to be working from right to left if I'm right-handed. So now we're going to start in the second chain from the hook. So place your work so you can see the little V's, and we never count the yarn on our hook as a chain. We're always going to start in this V directly next to it. So counting over, we're going to go 1, 2. I'm going to place my finger there next to that V, and I'm going to insert my hook into that chain, yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through both loops to do a single crochet. And now we're going to single crochet into each of the next 10 chains. So again, into that next V there, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. We've done so many single crochets at this point. I'm not going to continue to show you how to do that. We're just going to continue to work along this chain back up to our piece. So now that I'm back up to my round here, this is what your piece should look like at this point. We're back up and we're working into the previous round, which was round 14. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a single crochet decrease over the next 2 stitches. So we've worked into this last stitch here, right? Because that was our last single crochet before we did our chain. So we're not working into that stitch, we're working directly into the next stitch, and we're doing a single crochet decrease. And what this does is it helps to secure our cat's tail to the body. And now we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of these last 2 stitches. Oops. Now at the end of this round, you should have 37 single crochets. And to count that, again, you're going to count these V's across, and then we've also counting the stitches that we did in our tail. So now we're moving into round 16. To start round 16, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the first 7 stitches. So working our first single crochet and then moving up our stitch marker. And then we're going to do 6 more single crochets. So we have 7. So there's 1, 2. So I just counted and I've got my 7th single crochet, and now I'm ready to do a bobble. And so this bobble is done a little differently if you've done bobbles before, because it's been made a slightly smaller than a normal bobble in order to create one of the paws on our cat. So to do our bobble, we're going to yarn over and insert our hook into the next stitch. Then we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. Okay, at this point you should have 2 stitches left on your hook, or 2 loops on your hook. Then we're going to yarn over and insert back into the same stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop. At this point, it's getting a little trickier to see, but you have 4 loops on your hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops only on your hook. Okay. You should have 3 loops on your hook now. Then we're going to yarn over and insert back into that same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm trying to separate them the best I can, but you should have 5 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops only. So right now you should have 4 loops on your hook, and what this essentially equates to is 3 incomplete double crochets on your hook. So what you're going to do at this point now is you're going to yarn over and pull through all 4 loops on your hook. Okay, and that's going to create a little bobble that's going to create one of your paws on your cat. So what we're going to do is we're going to single crochet once into the next stitch. Now at this point, you're going to say, what bobble? There's nothing there. You're going to need to take your finger and put it on the inside of the fabric and pop that bobble out to the front side of your fabric. If you're finding it tricky and it's not really kind of popping out, you can just take the tip of your hook and push it underneath the bobble so it pops out on the right side of your fabric, like so. Okay, then we're ready to move on to our next paw. So our next paw is done by doing what's called a double crochet 2 together in the same stitch. And so it's kind of like our bobble, but with a slight variation. Oops. So what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over and insert our hook into the next stitch. Then we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. We'll have 3 loops on our hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. Okay, you have 2 loops on your hook. And you're going to yarn over and insert your hook into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 4 loops on your hook here. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops only. All right, you have 3 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. And that's your double crochet 2 together completed. Then you're going to single crochet once into the next stitch. So what that little double crochet 2 together has done is created another even smaller bobble. So what you're going to do is you can either take your finger or your hook and you're just going to go in there and pop that out. So it's on the front of your fabric, like so. All right, so now we've got our 1 single crochet done, and we're going to do 1 more single crochet into the next stitch. And we're ready to create our next paw. And our next paw is done by creating another one of those double crochet 2 togethers in the same stitch. So we're going to yarn over, insert into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. There's 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and insert back into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. There's 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And that is your double crochet 2 together in the same stitch completed. So you're going to work 1 single crochet here into the next stitch. And again, by working that single crochet, it pops your little bobble onto the inside of your fabric. So you can just use either your finger or your hook to grab that stitch and kind of pull it to the right side so it pops on the appropriate side. So then we're going to work another bobble stitch. And so again, this is that minimized bobble where we're doing 3 double crochets into the same stitch. So yarning over your hook and inserting into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. Yarn over and insert back into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. Now there's 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and insert back into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. There's 5 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. There's 4 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through all of those loops on your hook. And now we're going to do a single crochet into the next stitch. So again, we're just going to pause at this moment to pop the bobble to the right side of the fabric using either our finger or our crochet hook. All right, so now that we have our first single crochet done after our bobble, we now have to place 1 single crochet into each of the next 7 stitches. So here's 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7. So now that we've done our 7 single crochets, what we're going to do is we're going to skip over the tail. So I literally just did this, so don't do what I did. You want to make sure that your tail is on the outside of the cat, okay? I had moved the tail out of the way to show you guys much clearer how to work this next few stitches here, but then forgot that, maybe the tail should be on the outside. So important note, tail on the outside of the cat, okay? So skipping over this section here with the cat's tail, we're going to place 1 single crochet into each of these last 3 stitches, okay? So here we go. We've got the cat's tail on the outside, hurrah, and we're working our last 3 single crochets. At the end of round 16, you should have 26 stitches, right? And take a look. How cute are those little feet? Oh, I love him. All right, so we're moving into round 17 here. And to start round 17, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the first 3 stitches. So here's our first stitch. Let's move up that stitch marker here. And then we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Now we're going to do a single crochet decrease in the next. So again, picking up those front loops of the first and second stitches. And then essentially you're just doing a single crochet once you've done those front loops. So now we're going to do a pattern repeat 5 times around our piece, and that repeat is 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches followed by a decrease. So here's the first stitch and 1 single crochet into the next. And now we're going to do a single crochet decrease. Now you're seeing that our first decreases here are done where the bobbles are. I recommend taking a look and making sure you tilt your work upwards so you can clearly see the loops of the actual stitches, and then you're not picking up any of the loops on your bobbles. So front loops of the first and second stitch here, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And then we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So there's 1 and 2. Now we're going to do a single crochet decrease. And 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Single crochet decrease. And 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Single crochet decrease. And 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Single crochet decrease. And 1 single crochet into that last stitch. At the end of round 17, you should have 20 single crochets. And now we're ready to move on to round 18. Now, these are the last 2 rows of our cat, so this is a great time to add all the stuffing that you need here. I'm actually going to take a moment here and just add some stuffing to my toy. And we'll be adding stuffing as we work these last 2 rounds, because this is our last opportunity to add that stuffing. Now, while you're adding stuffing, I like to make sure that I'm paying attention to this front section here, so that way these bobbles are being continuously popped out by the force of the stuffing. All right. So that's all looking good now, and we're ready to move on. So now we're starting round 18. We're going to start round 18 with a single crochet decrease. So inserting under the front loops of the first and second stitch, we're doing a decrease here and moving up our stitch marker. And now we have a pattern repeat that we need to do 6 times for this round. We're going to do 1 single crochet into the first stitch, followed by a decrease into the next. So again, under the front loops of those first and second stitches, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2. And so that's one repeat done. We need to do this 5 more times. So 1 single crochet into the first stitch, followed by a decrease stitch. So if you'd like to pause your video and continue to do 1 single crochet, followed by a decrease until the end of the round, at the end of this round, you should have 13 stitches. So I'll meet you back here at the end of this round and show you how we're moving into round 19. So we're ready to start into round 19, but this is going to be your last opportunity really to add any stuffing to your toy. So if you're feeling like you need to add any stuffing, this is a good point to go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to take a moment, add a little bit more in there. I feel like there's some space here at the back. All right, so moving into round 19, we're going to do 6 single crochet decreases to start our round. Now let's get that stitch marker out of the way. Then we're going to, again, we're working under the front loops of the first and second stitch. And then we're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2. And that's our first single crochet decrease. And we need to do this 5 more times. There's 2. Now, when you're doing the single crochet decreases in this round, it can be tricky to do them under the front loops. So if you're finding that it is too tedious or tricky for you to do that, you can just work the single crochet decrease under both loops if that is easier for you to get done in this row. All right, and here is our last single crochet decrease for this round. And now we have 1 stitch left to be worked, and we're just going to work 1 single crochet into that last stitch. At the end of this round, you should have 7 single crochets. So now we're going to finish off our cat's body. And so we're going to cut a yarn tail of at least 6 to 8 inches. I'm going to leave mine a little longer because I'm going to show you how to use your yarn tail to make some changes to the bottom of the cat so it can stand up on its own. You can do this next step with a separate piece of yarn if you'd like, but I like to make it all one piece and just have one really long tail. So I'm going to cut my tail of at least 8 inches here, and then I'm going to pull the yarn tail all the way through my last stitch. And then we're going to need our tapestry needle or yarn needle here, and we're going to thread the yarn tail onto our needle. Now we're going to cinch the hole closed with our yarn tail first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that stitch marker out of the way. Then we're going to weave the yarn tail using our needle through the front loops of the last round. So we know what the front loops are. We've done this for increases or decreases through this whole piece. So we're just using our yarn tail to go up and under the front loop of each stitch around. We want to make sure that we pick up every stitch of the round. All right, so now that we have woven the tail through the front loop of every stitch, we're just going to give that a gentle pull to cinch the hole closed. So now what you can do is you can go in through the center of our piece and out through any of the other stitches that you would like to come out of, making sure that you actually come out through a stitch. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick one of these other stitches in the bottom, pull it through, and pull that tight. So that should be nice and flat now. So now that, I think it went off the screen a little bit, so I do apologize. So what I've done is I've gone through the center of the magic ring and I've come out through another stitch in the bottom of the piece here. So I'm just going to give this a little test. And yes, I've stuffed this to the point where he just doesn't want to stand up on his own. He's had a little too much milk. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take my yarn or my needle and I'm going to go back into the piece and I'm going to come out in one of these stitches that's just off center. So this is my magic circle. It might be hard to tell because it's all the same color here, but this here is the center of my magic circle. I'm going to come out into one of these stitches here that's right next to the magic circle. So technically it's through one of these stitches in the last round, or the second to last round. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to insert my hook back into the center of the piece and I'm going to come out somewhere up here through the body. Doesn't matter. There's no, exact place to come out, just as long as you're not picking up any yarn. You're just coming through one of the holes in the stitch. Then I'm going to come through here and pull that all the way through. And so what this is going to do is I'm going to pull this like this until I get a little bit of an indent in that. What you can do is you can also pull a knot inside your toy if you think that will help pull that in securely. What I'm going to do is actually put a little knot here. And I'm going to come back in through the same stitch and I'm going to go out through the other side. So it's kind of like weaving in your ends, but what I'm doing is I want that knot to get stuck up inside the stuffing near the head. And what it does is creates a little indent. And that little indent is going to help our little buddy here stand up all on its own. So again, in the instructions, I tell you, you can put a knot and you're going to tie it in, have the knot go in through the bottom. It doesn't really matter. The knot near the bottom is the most effective and you can get it a bigger indent that way. But if you're just weaving in your ends like normal and you give it a good pull, you put a couple of knots in your yarn and then tug those into the fabric a few times. And making sure that you're putting some tension on that and your toy is stuffed sufficiently. You don't need to actually put the knot so close to the bottom. You can actually just have it anywhere in the yarn as long as you pull that up tightly. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that tightly and we want to make sure that we're not putting any indents in our fabric while we're doing that. And I think I'm all set here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the yarn a little tug and then I'm going to pull, give it a little tug, and then I'm going to cut the yarn as close to the fabric as I can, and then the yarn tail gets pulled inside. All right, so this is our little dude so far. I'm going to put him aside because we're going to move on to making his ears next. So to make our ears, we're still using the same colored yarn. You can mix that up should you wish. And we're going to be needing to make 2 of these. So we're going to start by making a magic circle. We've already done this once before. And again, if you need to see this slower, you can slow down the YouTube tutorial speed in the settings here down there on the side, or you can just watch the tutorial on this here on the channel. So again, holding the yarn tail in our hand, pinning it down, wrapping it around our fingers, make an X, flip it over and pin it down. Then we're going to take our hook under, over and pull through, twist, and then yarn over and pull up the loop through the loop on your hook. And that's your magic circle. So now we're going to start the actual ear, and for round 1 we're going to start just like we did with our cat. We're going to work 6 single crochets into the magic ring. Inserting into the ring, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. And we're going to do this until we have 6 single crochets. There's 3. And there is 6. So now that I've got my 6 single crochets, I'm going to pull my loop closed. And I'm ready to move on to round 2. Make sure you've got your stitch marker handy and we're ready to start. So round 2, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So inserting into that first stitch, remember that first stitch can be a little tricky. and then single crochet. And we're going to take our stitch marker and place it into that stitch. Then we're going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch around. At the end of this round, you should still have 6 single crochets. And now we're ready for round 3. For round 3, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches. So here is our first single crochet, and we're moving up our stitch marker. And then we're going to work 1 single crochet into the second stitch. And then we're going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. Now we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Followed by a single crochet increase into the last stitch. It's really small, so I hope you're able to see this. All right, and that is our ear. What we're going to do is we're going to cut a yarn tail of at least 8 inches here with our scissors, and then we're going to pull the yarn tail all the way through the last stitch. Now this piece is not stuffed. We're just going to flatten the piece down like this, and then we're going to set it aside and make a second ear because we're going to sew it to the head next. So if you'd like to pause your video and make a second ear, I'll be right back after I finish my second ear, and I'll show you how we're going to do the next piece for our cat, which is its muzzle. All right, to make the muzzle for our cat, we're going to have to create another magic circle. So we've done this a couple of times, so I'm going to do this quickly. So wrapping it around our fingers, pinning it in place, under, over, twist, yarn over, and pull through. All right, again, you can rewind if you need to see it slower, slow down the YouTube speed, or you can check out the tutorial slower on the channel. So for round 1, we're going to work 6 single crochets into the magic circle. So into the ring, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull through both loops. And we're going to do this till we have 6 single crochets. There's 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now that I have my 6 single crochets, I'm going to pull the ring tight, and I'm ready to move on to round 2. Make sure that you have your stitch marker handy. So for round 2, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches. There's our first stitch, placing a stitch marker in there. And then 1 single crochet into the next stitch. Now we're going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. Now we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Followed by a single crochet increase into the next. All right, so now we're going to cut a tail, leaving a tail of at least 8 inches on this piece and cutting our yarn. Then we're going to pull our yarn tail all the way through that last stitch. We're going to need our yarn needle here because we're going to thread our yarn tail onto our needle, and we're going to do what's called an invisible finish. So to do an invisible finish, we're going to remove our stitch marker, and I know that this is my first stitch is the last round. And what we're going to do an invisible finish is we're going to duplicate the first stitch of the round using our yarn tail here. So inserting our needle into the second stitch from front to back, we're going to push that needle all the way through. And again, if you need to see this slower, you can find a full tutorial of this done in slow motion here on the channel. So now that we have our yarn pulled through, we're going to pull the yarn tail until it's lays on top of the front loop of the first stitch. Now, because this piece is so small, it's going to want to curl in on itself. So we want to make sure that we manipulate the piece so the right side is facing as we're doing this, because we want it to kind of make a small cone shape, and the invisible finish will help us do that. We want the right side to be facing out because this is going to be sewn onto the face, and we want the best side of the fabric showing. So now that we have our front loop duplicated, we're going to insert our hook from the top of this stitch through the back loop only of the last stitch of the round. So here is, let me just loosen it up because it's hard to see in the gray a little. So that's our yarn tail over the first stitch, and this is the last stitch of our round. So inserting from the top, picking up the back loop only and going through the back of the fabric here, we're going to pull our yarn all the way through. And so if we pull that really, really slowly, you'll see that it kind of turns into the front and loop, back loops of the first stitch, right? And it's almost invisible. You can almost not even tell that it's there. So what we're going to do is we can now sew this muzzle onto our cat. Now I have made a really long yarn tail here on my magic circle, so I'm just going to trim that down so it's not so cumbersome for us here on the video. And I'll tuck that inside. Now, I find this next part handy if you have some pins. So let me just grab a pin here. I like to use corsage pins. You can use just a regular sewing pin. Whatever is going to help hold this piece in place for you, or any of the pieces that you're sewing onto amigurumi, it's super helpful to have these pins. All right, almost looks like a little seal now with a ball on its nose. So what we're going to do is we're going to place the muzzle on the face. I like the top of my muzzle here to line up with the bottom of the eyes, and I'm going to use my yarn tail to sew the muzzle to the cat's face. You're going to need some stuffing to add to this piece as we're working, so just have that handy and off to the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start sewing the piece onto the face of the cat. So I'm going to go through both loops of the muzzle when I'm working through the muzzle, and when I'm working into the cat, I am working into the fabric directly under where the next stitch I'll be working into is. And I'm just working around the piece. Now at this point, I'm going to remove my pin, and I'm going to take a moment to add a little bit of stuffing in there. It's really tricky because it's so little. If you need to, you can use the tip of your scissors, tip of your needle, whatever you need to add a little bit of stuffing in there before you finish closing it up. So now I've got my stuffing all stuffed in there, and I'm just going to continue to sew around this piece. All right, and I'm almost back to the beginning. This is my last stitch here. So again, working under both loops so that it gets pulled down towards the fabric. So now that I'm done, I'm going to insert my my needle here in the stitch directly underneath the stitch I just did in the muzzle piece, and I'm going into the fabric on the cat, and I'm just going to insert my needle through that stitch and out anywhere on the other side of the fabric, making sure I'm going through a hole and I'm not catching any yarn. I'm just going to use that yarn tail to pull that down, and that's how the muzzle looks so far. So at this point then I'm going to weave in my ends, and to do that I'm going to tie a knot close to the fabric in the tail of my yarn. I like to do 2 knots on top of each other because the bigger the knot, the easier or the more drag or easier it is to get stuck inside the stuffing inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the same stitch I just came out of and come out anywhere out of the cat's body. Again, coming through a stitch, a hole in the stitch, not the actual yarn. Then I'm just going to pull that tight and pull the knot inside of the fabric. Now, if you find that it indents your fabric when you do that, just take the tip of your needle and put it into the fabric and push on it from the inside to decrease that indent. All right. Now I'm going to do that one more time, tying a knot or 2 into the yarn tail close to the fabric. And then pulling those knots down inside the toy. Okay, now that I'm done, I'm going to give that tail a little pull, and I'm going to cut the yarn close to the body. And then because of that tension, the other side should be pulled directly inside the toy. All right, so now we are going to sew on the ear. Let me just find my ear. Here it is. All right. So I've got my ear, and again, we flattened these pieces. We are not going to be stuffing them. And my yarn tail here is a little longer than I'd like, so I'm just going to trim that up. That's the one from the Magic Circle. I'm keeping the yarn tail that we left at the end of the piece attached so we can sew it onto the cat. So threading my yarn tail onto the tapestry needle. Then I'm going to take a look at my cat, have it facing me, and then I'm going to find the best placement for my ear. Now, we're going to be having 2 of these, so, I mean, you've likely seen a cat before, so you kind of get an idea of where you want to have the placement. So I like to find the magic circle here, and I like to line this up with approximately the same spot on both sides. So I like to line it up with the top of the first round. Now, to help me hold that in place, I'm going to bring in one of my pins here, and I'm just going to put it in through the top and down into my toy, so it will help keep that in place while I'm sewing. Now, because our piece is flattened, while we're sewing our ear to our head, we're going to be working through both thicknesses of the fabric. That means both sides. So going into the fabric on the cat's head directly under where the last stitch is, or where your yarn tail is attached to, we're just going to go into that stitch and out through the other side. And then because we're on the back, I'm going to go and find the next stitch on the ear and go into that stitch and then out through the other side, ideally coming through another stitch. Right, we want to stick as close to the bottom as possible while we're doing this. And then we're going to go in through the ear, or into the head, and back out the other side. And now I'm going to be going into the next stitch and out through the other side. If your pin gets in the way, you can pick it up, take it out, and move it around. I'm getting lucky here, and it's not becoming too cumbersome yet. Back into the head and out through the other side. And we're just working along the bottom of the ear. So I've sewn all the way along the edge of the ear. I'm going to pull that pin out and get it off to the side here so it's no longer in the way. So there is one of our ears stitched on. When I'm done, I'm just going to weave in my ends. So again, I'm going to go in through the same stitch it just came out of and out through another stitch. I could have tied a knot there, but I decided to tie a knot at another location here. And then, like we did with the muzzle, I'm just going to tie 2 knots into the yarn tail close to the fabric. And then we're going to go back into the same stitch we came out of and out through another. And pull those knots inside. All right, and I'll do that one more time. And then back into the body and out somewhere else. And I feel like that's secure enough, so I'm just going to give that yarn tail a nice little tug, cut the yarn tail close to the fabric, and then I am done. So then you'll follow these instructions to sew the other ear onto the cat. But instead of doing that, I'm going to jump into doing the embroidery for the nose on our cat here. So taking your pink embroidery thread, we're going to cut a piece of embroidery thread, probably about, let's say about 10 to 12 inches long. Longer if you are unsure or you just want to have extra just in case. I've got mine and I'm going to cut it here, and then I'm going to thread one end onto my needle. Now I like to do my embroidery with my thread held double because it speeds up the job a little bit for me. So I'm going to match up the ends of my thread and then tie a knot or 2 in the end. Doesn't matter if it's the tidiest knot because we're going to pull it inside the cat and no one's going to see it. We just want it to have be sizable enough that it's going to get stuck inside the stuffing inside the cat, but not too big that you can't pull it through the fabric. All right, so I'm happy with that. Then I'm going to bring my cat in and we're going to insert our needle through one of the stitches. Again, when I say one of the stitches, I mean one of the holes in the stitches in the back of the cat. And I want to come out through this little circle here in the muzzle. So I'm going to insert my needle here and come out through what was the center of our magic ring. Okay, then I'm going to pull that. Oops. Second, my embroidery thread did not get pulled through evenly, so I had that little loop and I don't want that. So I'm going to pull that all the way through. There we go. And I pulled the knot inside the head. So at this point you have 2 options. You can either pursue a triangle nose like I've done here, or you can go across if you want a very simple nose and go back and forth to have a rectangular nose. I'm going to show you how to do the triangular nose like I have done in my original sample here. And so I've come at the middle of the magic ring here and I'm just going to kind of take a look at the top and I just find the top 2 stitches that would be the top corners of my triangle. So for me here would be this stitch and this stitch. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I like to give my thread a pull so that way I know that they're even, and then I'm going to go in through this top stitch here and out through the second stitch that will be my second corner of my triangle. And then I'm just going to pull that all the way through. Okay, you don't want to pull it too tight so that it's pulling your fabric together. You just want to lay gently on the fabric. So then I've got I'm up here at the top here and I'm going to go in through the bottom or the center here and back out through that stitch up here in the top. Oops, cut my tail here. And I'm just going to pull that all the way through. Okay. Then I'm going to go across the top of the nose. So I'm going to go from this stitch to this stitch. And then I want to come back out through that center or magic circle stitch again. It can get a little tight, especially if you're using a larger needle like I am, but we persevere. All right, so there is the top of our nose. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my needle and embroidery thread to fill in this space here. So I'm going to use this as a guideline, this top stitch here as a guideline to essentially, it's like coloring. You're just going to fill in the space with your thread. Now I'm just going to go back through here and out through that same hole down there. Again, I should have chosen a thinner needle for this. But like many craft supplies, my thread or my embroidery needles and yarn needles like to walk away. All right, so back up through the top here and back out through center. Again, we're just filling this in. The top here doesn't need to be perfect, I should note, because we're going to cover that up at the end. So if your top here is a little messy, no big deal. We're going to cover that up. All right, we're almost there. I think just a couple more passes. All right, so I think this will be the last pass, and then I'm going to show you how to clean up the top. When I'm at my last pass, what I want to do is I want to come out, have my needle come out through one of those top stitches in the corner. All right, so that looks okay to me. And then, so now that I'm in that top corner, I want to lay my yarn across the top here, go to the other corner here, and into that other corner, and this will lay the embroidery thread across the top of the nose and clean up that edge for you. And then I'm just going to pull that needle through one of the stitches near the back of the head here. And I don't want that to be too tight here, so I'm going to just loosen that up a bit. Now I'm just going to use my finger to put my muzzle back into shape because it took a little bit of beating with that larger embroidery thread needle there. And now that I'm done, I'm just going to weave in my end. So I'm just going to tie a knot again or two, and then I'm going to pull that into the body of the cat somewhere. You can do this once, twice. I usually like twice if I have enough thread to just help make sure it's good and secure. Now that I'm done, I'm going to pull that, give that a snip, and then if anything is showing, any of the embroidery thread is showing like I have here, I'm just going to use either my needle or the tip of my scissors to just kind of poke it back into the body. All right, and that's how you make your cat. Make sure that you sew on your other ear. We've already covered how to do that. And again, if you see that your little baubles are pushed in, you can use your fingers to kind of pop them out. And so I'm going to sew on my other ear here, and there you go. We've got our own little mini cats. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please hit that like button and please consider subscribing to this channel. If you enjoy free crocheted patterns, please check out my blog, theloopylamb.com. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Happy hooking, and I'll see you next time.